Welcome to the inaugural episode of Furry Faced Finance, the show where we help young adults get a vision of what their future financial security can be. I'm JR.
And I'm Michael. And in the past, we've done a few pre-recordings. Today is our big debut. We are so pumped up that you guys are going to join us on this journey. Today, we're going to be talking about retirement. So we're going to jump straight to what some consider the end of life. But, that's not always the case. And as you're going to hear from me and JR, we're going to kind of fill you in as to why that is.
Yeah, we basically have come up with 4 different approaches to retirement to let you to inform you about each of them so you can make a good informed decision on which approach to retirement you want to take. And the last one is actually kind of a surprise approach to retirement that most people don't consider. So hang in there for that one. The first one we want to talk about, of course, is your traditional form of retirement. This is probably the one that your parents have been pitching to you for ever since you've been getting ready to leave the nest, so to speak. It is the model that most of your financial gurus will pitch to you and try and educate you on how to accomplish. And that is your traditional retirement, where you start saving young, you use compounding interest to grow that money as much as possible over the course of your life, and you retire at age 65 or 67, or maybe an early retirement at 63, and then you start drawing on that money. And the concept is that you basically start taking that money and you hope that the money holds out long enough that you die before the money runs out. So that's your traditional retirement. Michael, what are some of the benefits and the pros and cons to that you can think of?
Yeah, I think some of the pros that stick out to me is it's more kind of secure in a way because you're investing, you're making those decisions, you're stocking it away. You've got that nest egg that you've been growing year after year after year, and you're seeing that, and it's kind of reinforcing in your brain each time you get that statement. Oh, it's growing my retirement, I'm closer to retirement, and you're seeing that progress. So I think that is really huge. Kind of one of the downsides to that, though, is the job security, because in order to invest, you've got to make that money. So a lot of people in that way, that's a big reason entrepreneurship really wasn't a huge thing to a lot of people. Most people think go to corporate America, you're going to work, put in your 401k, go and do that, and you're going to work that job from age 18 till you retire. And nowadays, with how things change, laws, and just how people are more passionate about going for who they are, that may be something to consider, because most likely you're not going to stay in that same job. You're going to hit a ceiling eventually where you're maxed out at your skill set, and then you've got to go to do some extra courses to gain some more skill sets. So that sometimes you meet new people and that tries to take you to a different direction. So those are kind of the pros and cons that come to mind to me when I think about the traditional route.
Yeah, it is definitely more secure when you're investing over the long term, because your investments tend to go up and down, and if you're investing over the long term, it's eventually going to go back up again. When you may lose some money in your portfolio, but it'll eventually go back up. So that's kind of nice. But like you say, jobs, I think the statistic says that everybody will change jobs 5 times in their lifetime now. And so the fact that the idea that maybe your parents or at least your grandparents had of retirement, where you start with one company, you're loyal to that company, and they're loyal to you for your entire working life, that's really just gone out the window.
And that reminds me, because one of the guys I used to work with at one of my old jobs was actually working there just to supplement, because he had a pension. Who's heard of a pension nowadays? Like, no companies offer a pension anymore.
Very few. So
that's kind of talking about that traditional route, is that pension was big for them, because they were like, oh, once I hit that 20 years of service, or whatever the company or government had mandated, that then I can retire on that and then make other money.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays it's kind of out the window, so you don't have that opportunity. So you kind of got to get a little bit more creative, which kind of I feel like leads us to kind of number 2, which is FIRE. And JR would love to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. FIRE is actually, this is the approach to retirement that my wife and I took without even knowing that we were doing it. This was years ago, before the whole fire frenzy has come about. But FIRE is basically, the FIRE stands for Financially Independent Retire Early, is what FIRE stands for. And what these people do is, what your traditional model will say, put away 10% of your income, put away 10% of your income. Well, the FIRE community said, what would happen if I put away 25% or 35% or 75% of my income, and then I could retire really early in life? And they have this approach where they're dumping as much as they can into their investments, and then retiring at age 35 or 45, somewhere in there. And it's definitely an interesting approach to retirement. The benefit, of course, is, you retire when you're 35 or 40. That's a lot of great years you have left to go and do the stuff you want to do. The biggest drawback I see to that is you have to know that you will have far less money to play around with. These people they know very well that they're cutting their expenses to the bone in order to be able to sock as much money into their investments as they can. And so that's kind of the trade-off I see with FIRE.
Yeah, and I think when I think of that, I think short game versus long game. You're playing for the long game. You're running the marathon, not the sprint. The sprint, that's what I'm saying, is that short time that you're struggling financially, your friends are out partying and going on great vacations, Snapchat and Instagram video. That's all fun and well, and that's fine if that's their strategy, their money, their life. But the FIRE, who's going to last longer when you're out? You're like, oh, hey, I'm going to go on a cruise. You want to come? And they're like, oh, no, I got to work. Sorry, I don't. I'm gone. Bye. So then at the end of the day, you're going to have more money. You're going to be able to afford those grander vacations without that stress, which I know I've been guilty of. You put it on a credit card at a young age because you want to go do it. So you put it on a credit card, so then you've got the debt, then you've got extra stress of trying to pay somebody else off. So I think the FIRE is a good strategy to consider for a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's not the only model of FIRE. There are a lot of people who, and we'll talk about this in a future episode. There's a lot of people that say, well, I just never want to retire. And I think to some degree it's a misconception about what retirement is, and we'll talk about that in a future video, what retirement really actually is. But that brings us to our third model of retirement. We've got the traditional model, we've got FIRE, but we also have kind of a hybrid FIRE where they save as much as they possibly can and have the ability, the freedom to retire, but they just never leave their job because they like maybe while they're doing the FIRE approach, they're working a job that just does not really satisfy them, but they work it because it pays really well. And then once they've achieved financial independence, then they rather than just quit the job, they go and get a job that they really love, that they really feel passionate about, that they really feel like they're contributing to society with. And they then feel very fulfilled in their job. So they just keep working, even though they know they could retire any day because they've got the funds set aside to do so. And that's another interesting approach to FIRE. Has kind of some of the same cons. You're still going to have to cut your expenses to the bone to save enough money to be financially independent when you're 35 or 40, but it has that added benefit of, well, I don't have to wonder what I'm going to do with the rest of my life once I've got enough money to retire. You know what you're going to do because you're going to move into that job that you just really, really would love to do.
Exactly. And I mean, that kind of does a little bit of a safe fault because if you think about it, FIRE strategy, kind of another con that just got brought up when JR was talking about that, is if you're doing the FIRE hybrid where you're actually still working, if there's anything that goes screwy with the economy, hit another depression, or recession, anything like that, you're still making that money. So, I mean, even if your investments are down, you're not freaking out going, oh no, my whole like retirement plan is
Right.
gone. You're still bringing that money in. So you're able to keep compensating yourself. Whereas the other fire strategy, you might have to get back into a job, but thankfully at that point, you've already set yourself up where you can go for something you're passionate about. You're not locked down to something you have to do. You're getting to do what you want to do. And at that point, like JR said, you're fulfilled, you're happy. And I'm such a big proponent of what Gary Vee says, happiness greater than everything. Happiness is number one. I mean,
Yeah.
that money will find you when you're happy. People love to buy from people that they like, that they see are happy. People love to do business in general. They'll come to you and ask you questions if you're happy and approachable. So, I mean, your opportunities will come as long as you're happy and doing something you're passionate about. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, and the other benefit that this approach has is we live in a world where jobs can be just cut, and so whether you may be doing a great job at your position, and the company comes to you and says we had to cut that position out, so we don't have a job for you anymore. You're at least set up for something like that. So,
Yeah.
and that kind of brings us to our final model of retirement, so to speak, the one that is in air quotes for sure, is the concept that you just plan to never retire. Has some interesting benefits. I mean, if you're not trying to come up with, if you're not approaching fire, then you would have an extra 35 to 75% of your income to play around with. If you're not approaching the traditional model, you'd have an extra 10% of your income to play around with. So and you can do that. You can have kind of mini retirements all throughout your life.
Sure.
And so that's the benefit. The drawback is there are some things that can happen later in your life that can make working into your 80s difficult, into your 70s or 80s. And so you really do need to, in this model, you really need to think about where your career is going. Am I going to be able to, if am working in a factory and eventually going to have to transition into a desk job somewhere, whether that's with the company or writing a blog about what you did in the company or something like that.
True.
You may have to transition.
Yeah, and JR hit that on the nail on the head on that one, because we were actually talking before the show, and I said, yeah, me personally, I'll probably keep working even a part-time job or something once I retire. And I was like, because I think I would get bored and become one of those people that get depressed and eventually just die because I have no like purpose and no drive. And JR was like, actually, we should probably do an episode on retirement, because he brought up that exact point that you can work and just keep working, and you don't have to necessarily retire. You can go do fun things, but that there is a big misconception about retirement, because it's not all about just sitting in one chair staring at a TV the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Or sitting on the beach, even in some cases that some people try to paint online.
Yeah, guys, we are going to kind of flesh out each of these models of retirement over the course of the next 4 weeks. So come back and check those out. We'll develop each of them a little bit further, and we definitely want to be a part of what your decision is. If you want to hit us up on Facebook, on Instagram, at Furry Faced Finance, if you want to Snapchat us at Furry Faced, we would love to chat with you about your retirement plans.
And guys, JR has given us a great opportunity here. He's actually going to include in the description a PDF file with the 4 highlights of the retirement. So keep an eye out for that, and then you'll be able to have that to give to any of your friends, children, anybody that you think that needs to see this and kind of think about the future. So guys, we believe in you, and we can't wait to see you next week.